The second question, we'll start with Mr. White, work our way back around to Mr. Harmon. The second question is, what is your position on proposed Florida Constitutional Amendment number 8 with respect to limiting school board members to 2 4-year terms? And what is your position on that same constitutional amendment that would allow the state legislature to establish, operate, and control charter and private schools going forward?
Thank you for the question, and I will answer it directly, but I want to say that if you look up that Senate Bill 7026, you'll find that our school district received about $800,000 in mental health funds that we will be using this year to help with that. Now, specifically regarding that amendment number 8, I have already said way back when I first ran for this office 4 years ago that if you would have me for 4 years, that I would try to give you another 4, but I've already term limited in my own self. However, I will say this. I do have some issues with the government limiting my voting rights. For example, if I wanted to vote for someone, but I couldn't do it just because they had been there for 8 years, I have a little bit of a concern with that, but in my case, I've already said that I'm not going to do it anyway. The other thing I would say to you is this. In terms of charter schools, this might not be a real news flash in this audience. The state already controls them. They already control them. In fact, the school boards really aren't allowed to even say no when there's an application for a charter school. Thank you.
Dr. Slusser, same question.
Yes. You know, when I decided to run back in 2014, I told my wife, I said, well, it'll help me if I win in 2014. I'm going to do it for 8 years. And I strongly believe that's what we should have in our Congress and in our Senate, and we should have that, but we should have term limits. I came from Kentucky, and there was a fellow up there named Mitch McConnell that has been around since Adam was a boy. And he used to be our congressman up there, and I'd like to see him, my brothers and sisters like to see him step down too. As far as charters, we don't have any control over charter schools. The state is, you know, Dr. Lamar is right. The state does that. They can come in here and set up a charter school, and we can't do anything about that. The charter schools have good sides and bad sides, but we don't have any control on either side of those. Thank you.
Ms. Evanchyk, same question.
Yes, okay. Yes, I believe in term limits for school board, but I also would like to see that extended to the superintendent. And then on the part about charter schools, I am very pro public schools. Yes. I've grown up in it, I've worked in it, and I am worried that some of the problems we've had in our school district is chipping away at our rights as voters, your rights as a voter, to control what's going on in our public schools, and that charters are going to move in. Now, I'm not totally against every single charter. We have a couple charter schools in our area, and they have a specific function, and they've done a great job. But we don't want to end up, and I've said it before when I was speaking, that some of the larger districts in this state are not performing well. They're not A districts like Okaloosa, and so they're being taken over by companies, corporations who are going to tell them what to do. So I am not for this. Thank you.
Dr. Kelley, same question.
Okay, interestingly, I already answered that question for you in my dialogue at the beginning, but I would tell you that charter schools are also sometimes referred to as schools without rules. If you haven't heard them called that, they're called that for a reason, because they get an alleviation from some of the measures that we as public schools have to abide by. One of those measures is testing measurement. They have to use testing, but they can devise their own or choose to adopt a testing measure other than the ones that we adopt. So from my point of view, charters are not a good thing. I too, I've lived my whole life as a public school lady, serving as a teacher and principal in 3 of our schools, so you know that I adhere to public schools. One quick thing, when I was Valparaiso commissioner and we closed Valparaiso Elementary, I sat on that committee and heard those charters coming in wanting to take that building. I was the one standing against letting a charter move into Valparaiso Elementary School. I lived that life, I fought that fight. And let me just say, every student enrollment is dollars leaving public schools going elsewhere. I'm against charters in our public school district.
Dr. McAllister, same question.
I favor term limits. We are not elected to be career politicians. We're elected to represent the people. And so I favor term limits for all elected officials. Now, with respect to the change in the law that would take place under this amendment, whereby Tallahassee would gain more control over charter schools. The fact is that charter schools are public schools, and I simply believe that we can control and manage our public schools, including charters, better at the local level than they can be managed at Tallahassee. Those schools are funded partly by our tax dollars, and they're best managed by those people who spent those tax dollars. So I favor local control of all public schools, including charters. Thank you.
Mr. Harmon, same question.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm also for term limits. We're not career politicians, but I've heard something said by some of the colleagues here on the board that we don't have any control over charter schools, but we do because we are taxpayers. And what we have to do is try to divert our money from these charter schools back into our public schools. I was also educated in the public school system. I know that there's changes taking place in Tallahassee legislation that we won't be able to stop the charter schools. But again, I would beg to differ because as taxpayers, our funding does not have to go, because what we're doing now is taking money from our needs, from special needs program, from other things that take place in our Okaloosa County school, public schools. This money is going to charter schools. And again, all this doing is funding big corporations. Our school board won't stand up and say, hey, we're not going to have a charter school because it's big business. It's really big business. Right here down in Miramar Beach, there's a Raider group. They have 9 schools. They have 3 outsourced academy schools, and they have 3 private in schools where the kids can go for like jail terms. And we need to stop letting our money go to those kind of programs. We need to try to give our students opportunity to be changed by doing the right thing for us, bringing them up the right way, and teaching them things to correct their second chances, the mistakes that they make over the years. But again, we do have opportunity to divert our money from these private schools and keep our money in public schools because we are taxpayers.